right? It says, why do you cry out to me, right? That actually, here the trope, it implies that it says, Hashem Moshe Matitzak Elai, meaning, why are you crying out? To me, you should be crying out. To me is the place, right? I'm the one. It's not that he's coming down on people for crying out, right? We're supposed to be praying. That was it. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode here of Live with the Times. So grateful to be here. My name is Maynard Breslow. Grateful for all of you. And today we are talking about the third Aliyah here in Parshas Beshalach. This is it. This is it. This is the culmination of all creation. It really is, right? As we've been saying, right? So many words and verses, psukim, have been used to even get to here, right? We go all the way back to Bereshit and the creation of the world, and how many few, in contrast, few words, pasukim, are used to describe the entire creation of the universe and all the things that led here up to the splitting of the Yam Suf and the Geulah of Am Yisrael, the splitting of the sea, this gigantic event, public display of power, might, complete omnipotence, just the Almighty, showing that everything is an illusion. And as we've been saying, this follows the theme of Emunah. The whole point here is to show what is Emunah, how to gain Emunah. And this very here parsha that deals with the splitting of the sea is going to give us some deep insights into what is Emunah. And before we get into that, everybody make sure to subscribe to the channel, share the channel, like the video, and let me know what you think here of the culmination of the Geulah, of the splitting of the sea and everything here. Now here we see that in the world, this concept of Emunah carries with it a religious connotation, a sort of a faith-based connotation. And you have arguments of people who are, quote, non-believers, who are believers. And today's Aliyah comes to teach us that it's really that everybody's a believer. Everybody has Emunah, just a matter of what you have Emunah in. Does a person have Emunah in that there is such thing as a creator? If there is, how much power does that creator have? How much is my duty in the world of the creator? And if a person doesn't believe in the creator, there's a lot of Emunah there as well. As we'll explain. Right, as it says here, it says that Hashem said to Moshe, why do you cry out to me? Hashem el Moshe, Matitzak Elai, the Bel Bnei Yisrael Vayisau. And it's given over as then Hashem said to Moshe, why do you cry out to me? Then tell the Israels to go forward. But an interesting interpretation this year that's actually got over by Rabbi Dana Gladstein, his YouTube channel, and actually it's from the Rashi, right? It says, why do you cry out to me, right? That actually here the trope, it implies that it says Vayom Hashem Moshe Matitzak Elai, meaning, why are you crying out to me? You should be crying out. To me is the place, right? I'm the one. It's not that he's coming down on people for crying out, right? We're supposed to be praying. Now the question is, well, of course we're supposed to be praying, but there's a time for prayer and there's a time for action. Tell the Israelites to go forward. And lift up your rod and hold out your arm over the sea and split it so that the Israelites may march into the sea on dry ground. And I will stiffen the hearts of the Egyptians So they'll go in after them and gain glory through Paro and all his warriors, his chariots, and his riders. Yadu, they have Das, Mitzrayim, Ki Ani Hashem, V'chavti, V'faro, V'irboy, U'farashav. Then they're going to have Das, real experiential Das, that I am Hashem. When they gain glory through Paro, his chariots, and his riders. And it says, the messenger of God, Vayisa Malach Elokim, HaHolech Lifnei HaMachanei Yisrael, Vayelech Mahamehem, Maharehem, Vayisa Amud, Hanan Mishmehem, Ibnehem, Vayamod Maharehem. And so this Malach of Elokim, who had been going ahead of the Israelite army and now moved and fell behind them, they came between the army and the Egyptians. So now there's this cloud in between. Then Moshe held out, Vayet Moshe et yadoi, al hayam, Vayolech Hashem es hayam, Veruach kadim, azeh, kol halayla, Vayasem es hayam, Vaharava, Vayevaku habayim. This is the moment, right? Moshe held out his arm over the sea, and Hashem drove back the sea with a strong east wind. That's hayam beruach kadim. All that night, and turned the sea into dry ground. The waters were split, and Bnei Israel went into the sea on dry ground. The waters formed a wall for them on their right and on their left. The Egyptians came and pursued after them into the sea, and all of Paro's horses, chariots, and riders. Called Sus Paro, Birbo, Farashav, Estoich Hayam. What happened? Right, this happened all the night. ויהי במשמרת הבוקר וישקף השם את מחנה מצרים מעמוד אש וענן ויהם אש מחנה מצרים. In the morning watch, Hashem looked down upon the Egyptian army from a pillar of fire and cloud, and they threw the Egyptian army into panic. And Hashem locked the wheels of their chariots as they moved forward. They were locked. And the Egyptians said, let us flee from Bnei Israel, for Hashem is fighting for them against Mitzrayim. Okay, cool story. That's it. That's everything. That's the culmination. The culmination is that that there was a strong east wind that came and split the sea, and the people were moving, and all of a sudden then the pillar came around, and the Egyptians knew, oh man, we're cooked. We're cooked now. And their things locked up, and that was it. They were thrown. Interestingly enough, it's not until tomorrow's Aliyah, the fourth Aliyah, that the sea actually comes down. This is only the splitting of the sea, the opening of the sea. Why is it specifically that the splitting of the sea is a different Aliyah from the closing of the sea? It's one big thing, right? But it's not. See, because what was it specifically that opened the sea? We talk about Emunah. What was it specifically that opened the sea? Well, the Torah says it right there. It says that it was Moshe raised his hands, and Hashem sent a strong east wind. And the strong east wind split the sea, and the people were able to walk through it. One thing that is very prevalent in this parsha, and specifically in this Aliyah, are the widespread Midrashim, the wide array of Midrashim that give so much insight into everything. And so when we look and we see what was it that split the sea, so we say it's a person can look, right? Any historian, any person who their Emunah is just history, or science, anthropology, can just look and say, come on now. First and foremost, the Torah, you're using the Torah as the basis of what happened. This thing never happened. And if it did happen, guess what? It was because of this wind. Listen, we can talk about all this stuff, right? You think that God is the one who created the rainbows. Well, don't you know the rainbows have droplets that are in the sky, and the sun is refracting from the droplets, and it creates this illusion of a rainbow. of the prism that goes through the droplets. And so that's what you're seeing, and you think that, oh, well, God created a rainbow. The rainbow's always there. Y'all are crazy. Right? Oh, an ark? You think that do you think that Noah brought all the animals onto an ark? Right? You think that the sea had red blood? We can explain red blood. And even funny enough, in this week's Parsha right now, in Parsha's Beshalach, there have been multiple reports, I believe one in South America and one in Africa, I could be mistaken, of different places where the water has turned red. Wow, what a quinky dink on the week of Parsha's Beshalach. Right, the water's turned red. And so the scientists are like, okay, well, we can figure out why that is. It's probably because of mineral imbalance. And they've been saying this too about all of the different plagues that happened in Egypt. Oh, you want plagues? We can make plagues. And this was also what happened with the sorcerers within Egypt. Oh, you want plagues? We can recreate the plagues. And what happened after each one? It wasn't until the lice that they had to say, Betzba Hashem. This is a finger of God. Right, it has to be Betzba Elohim, right? Because we can't recreate this one. There's cracks, right? Why? Because each time that a person has a theory and you can find a reason to support it, whether it makes any sense whatsoever, backed by anything, even if the person's saying that it's backed by science and they're scientists, and the reason that they're giving has no basis on actual scientific theory, method, it at least puts the person at ease. They have a reason why it is. They don't have to think anymore about it. Right? They don't have to think about Hashem. Right? Same thing with Paro. Right? That each time that the sorcerers could come and could recreate the plagues, Paro's like, thank goodness. I thought it was that God Hashem that they're talking about. So whatever, we have gods too. And you go on and on and on. And this is a form of Emunah. Right? That people who are atheists really, really, really have so much Emunah. They really, really, really believe that for sure, because that there is such a thing as a scientific method. And because through the scientific method, some things have been able to been explained. That means that there can't be another explanation as well at the same time. Right? For instance, if you have a car that's a Toyota, let's say, and you get it over, I'll use miles, even though, whatever, a lot of people use kilometers. I live in Israel to use kilometers. Anyways, you have a car that's getting up to 200,000 miles, right? A person can say, well, of course, it's a Toyota, right? They statistically go up to 200,000 miles more. Okay, great. But what about a person who doesn't change their oil? Of course, that's going to affect it, right? Person has to also change their oil. Person has to also keep take good care of the car. Have to drive in a way that is going to be conducive for the car to last long. There's many different factors that go in, and even using the scientific method, you can't just say that one causes another. You can say that there's correlation, there's not causation, right? And yet we've gotten into the habit of, because that there is some sort of explanation, we can then paint a wide brush and start creating this whole scene out of one little bit of hope of the science behind it, right? The Lubavitcher Rebbe said, first of all, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he was a scientist himself. I believe he was an electrical engineer. Definitely went to school, was definitely trained in science. And he's like, listen, shouldn't have been created science? Of course, Hashem created science too. What's the problem? Right? Torah is ahead of science. The science is catching up to Torah. Science is finding a way to explain physical ways that Hashem did the things. Doesn't discredit the fact that Hashem still did it. Right? And this is what this parsha comes to teach us. Because why? Because The Torah itself says in plain language, as much as you can through Targum, as much as we can know what the Torah is actually saying, right? Is that it was the east wind that brought it, okay? But then Moshe had to raise his hands, right? But then there's the famous Midrash, right? That it was Nachshon ben Aminadav. That Nachshon ben Aminadav is the one who went, and by taking steps one by one, that he was the first one, that there was different camps that wanted different things. Some of them were saying, let's just go back to Egypt. Right? Some of them were saying, let's unalive ourselves. Let's erase ourselves. Let's jump, right? And not in the way of let's move forward and Hashem will do it for us, right? There are people who wanted to battle. There are people who wanted to pray, right? And it was Nachshon ben Aminadav, one guy who went in and started just walking in, knowing anybody could walk in, right? But what was the difference? That he knew that the sea was going to split from. He believed all the things that Hashem had said. He had Emunah that all the things were said, and he had the Emunah, so he had the bitachon to go and take the steps forward. And then each time it would get up to his nostril, he could think, it's not really working, and the sea would split. And so you get a little bit more encouraged, and you say, wait a minute, and you take another step, and it starts splitting a little more, and splitting a little more, splitting a little more. And each step you're doing, it's splitting a little bit more. It's not that it was one big thing that happened, and the people are standing there. Right? We see a person can see the Prince of Egypt, and you think, and everything just opens up. Wow, wonderful. Look, it's all the salvation happened all at once. Wow, crazy, amazing, beautiful. It's not the way it happened. And yet there's another Midrash. Right, as we say in Hallel, right, in Tehillim 114. It says, Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, Beis Yaakov mi Amloyes, Haisa Yehuda lekadsho Yisrael mamshelo Esav, Hayam Rav Hayanois, Hayadem Yisov leacho, Heharim Akadu Chelim, Gevais Givnei Tzoin. Okay, beautiful. What does that mean? Right, so it says Mitzrayim that when Israel went forth from Mitzrayim, from Egypt, the house of Yaakov, from the people of Me'am Loyes, of strange speech, then Yehuda became his holy one, Israel his dominion. Hayama Avayanos, the sea saw them and fled. Hayardem Yisov Lecho, the Jordan ran backwards. Mountains skipped like rams, hills like sheep. And what was it? Malecha Hayam Kisanus Hayardem Yisov Lecho. What was it, O sea, that you fled, Jordan, that you ran backwards? That it was the God of Jacob, but what specifically was it? Elokei Yaakov. What was it specifically? Once again, here the Midrash, right? First and foremost, it says Yehuda became his holy one. Israel's dominion speaks of Yehuda. Nachshon ben Aminadav, come from the tribe of Yehuda. But the Midrash here says another thing. What was it? One of the things that they brought out with them from Mitzrayim. That was Moshe Rabbeinu was put in charge of this duty. It was to take out the bones of Yosef Atzadiq. Take out the bones of Yosef Atzadiq. And the Midrash says that this is what the sea saw. The Yam Suf saw the bones, saw the casket being carried of Yosef Atzadiq. And this is specifically what made the sea split. And even then, there's another Midrash that says that there was some sort of petek that was thrown in with the bones. The bones were thrown in, and that this was what caused the sea to split. And there's a petek along with it, some sort of mystical writing that was along with it. And that this was what split it. So what is it? Which one was it? Was it the sea? Was it the wind? Was it the Moshe splitting it? Was it Nachshon ben Aminadav? Was it Yosef Atzadiq and his bones and the sea being scared of it? Or was it this mystical parchment writings that were thrown in there along with it? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. The answer is, what is your Emunah lying? Where is your Emunah? Right? There's people who are atheists, who don't believe in anything, who think everything has an explanation. And if it doesn't have an explanation, then it doesn't exist. Until our little scientific method, and we can't even cover one little iota of the amount of sea that is on our earth. We haven't even covered even a fraction of the entire ocean of earth documented. But somehow we know everything. So if we haven't been able to find it, to test it, to verify it, then it must not exist. It's like if the tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? They say no, it doesn't make a sound because I wasn't there to test it. I wasn't there to test it. There's nobody there to test it if it actually fell or not. How do you know that it fell? Right? Then there are those like Nachshon ben Aminadav, who has the courage, the Emunah, the bitachon. They really believe in Hashem and they're moving forward. And they're doing everything they can and they're praying, and yet they know that Hashem is with them, so they're moving forward. Then there are those who are depending on the tzaddikim, and there are those who even have mystical things that they're doing, that they're relying on. They believe that Hashem is doing things based on these mystical things that they can do. And then there's Yosef Atzadiq. Yosef Atzadiq. That Yosef Atzadiq himself split the sea somehow. And what was it about Yosef Atzadiq that split the sea? What was it possibly about Yosef Atzadiq? All the commentators agree, and it's brought down also in the Kutei Halachot by Rebbe Nachman. What was it? It was the bris. That this whole thing was a culmination of the bris that Hashem had made with Avraham Avinu. That Avraham Avinu had made a bris, that when Avraham Avinu asked him, but how will I know? How will I know that this is actually going to happen? When he tells him and says, come outside and look at the stars in the sky. Do you see all this? And he showed him, he brought him out of reality and brought him into, there's Bed Bath and Beyond. He brought him to the beyond. And he was able to see all the future and all the past and all the way that it came about. But because he asked him, how will it happen? How will I know? Hashem said, oh, you want to know? That means you don't have Emunah. Because you don't have Emunah, it's going to have to come in a dark way. It could have been lit up in a most beautiful way. Because you didn't have Emunah, it came down in a dark way. And so he put him to sleep. But before then, what happened? He made him have the splitting of the parts, where he took different animals and he split them down the middle. And he set the different parts on each side, and Avraham Avinu had to walk through in between the parts. What does that remind you of? Right here, the splitting of the sea. So it was already from before that he had made a bris with Avraham Avinu. He had made a covenant promising him that this would happen, that he would open up and split the sea for his children. And so who fulfilled the bris? Yosef Atzadiq. Yosef Atzadiq, who was the personification of Shomer Bris, who he himself had the biggest test of temptation with Potiphera, with the wife of Potiphar. And even in the middle of sinning, starting, as the Midrash says, he said, nope. He saw an image of his father, and he stopped. And he endured all the tests and all the trials that were brought against him. And he had to stand there. He was being accused of all these things that he didn't do. And he was thrown in jail, and he sat in jail. And he was forgotten in jail. And even in jail, he became the most powerful person in jail through Emunah, through happiness, through knowing that Hashem was there with them, then knowing that everything was good. And because he went and he took this test and he was so happy with it, he was so grateful for it, he was able to come out and being lifted up, and he had to experience his own personal Geulah before the people experienced even their falling and their Geulah. He already had his Geulah, and he was able to be lifted up and to become the viceroy of the most powerful nation on earth. And he was able to amass the wealth of the entire world, and to bring about the wealth of the entire world and bring it together into one place, and allow the Jews to come into a place and be well taken care of. And he protected them while he was alive. And now after his death, he's still protecting them. Why? Because he guarded the bris. This is the reason why the sea split. Does it mean the other ones aren't true? It means they're also true. But what's your level of Emunah? Right? For the person who believes in Kabbalistic things, right? Then it was the betek that was thrown in. And each person according to their level of Emunah. But for the person who guards his covenant, the nature runs away from him. Miracles are happening for that person all the time. For him, that miracles are now commonplace. Why? Because he went against his nature. Everything's mida keneged mida. Everything is a turn for a turn. So if a person goes against his nature, and every single person says, oh, I mean, come on now. I mean, who's expected to pass that test? You know, you hear people, listen, I'm a man. How am I supposed to pass this test? 2 weeks of my wife being nidah. You know what's accessible on the internet these days? How am I supposed to be able to pass this test? I'm a man. I should be exempt from it. Fine. But guess what? So you're going to fall into nature. You are now in the washing machine, being turned around by nature. Whatever nature wants for you to do, this is what's going to be happening. And you're wondering, why are things going on? And why am I trying so hard at things and nothing's going? And why is it? And for the person who's guarding his covenant, he's able to change entire worlds. Everything that he wants is happening. And it's done here today. You'd be hard-pressed to find an atheist who's also shomer bris. There is such a thing, because even now scientifically they're finding out that apparently looking at improper things all day and the amount of dopamine that it shoots off in your brain screws up your neurotransmitters and can do a number on your brain and on your behavior and all that stuff. So now it's coming out in science as well, but it's catching up to the Torah. The Torah already said this. Torah said the person who's shomer bris, shomer yinayim, guarding their bris and guarding their eyes, they're above nature. Nothing's screwing with them. Their head is intact. They're normal people. But the person who wants to be following after their lusts, guess what? They're always having more craziness going on in their life, and they're following down this path. So even now you have atheists who have seen this and who are choosing to be shomer bris. And you also have religious people who have Emunah, who are not shomer bris. But the best is to be someone who has Emunah and Hashem and who is shomer bris. This kind of person is bring Moshiach. This kind of person is changing worlds. And it's an army now. It's an army of people who are going against their nature and completely taking on the path of Emunah and taking on the path of being shomer bris. And this is really the way that the Geulah is going to come, through an army of people who have Emunah and Hashem, who know that Hashem is doing everything. They're Nachshon ben Aminadav, and they're Yosef Atzadiq, and they're Moshe Rabbeinu, and they're doing everything in their power to bring about the Geulah. And it's only with Emunah, it's only with happiness. Just like Yosef Atzadiq, not only was he guarding his bris, but he was happy about everything that's going on. He was saying thank you down in the dungeon, singing and dancing until the warden said, who is this crazy Jew down there? Why are you so happy all the time? What do you mean? Everything's good. Come here, you crazy Jew. Get out of here. We're gonna give you a job. You don't gotta be in the cell all the time. The person's getting out and getting higher positions. And from that place, they're getting promoted, all the way up to viceroy. So a person has to ask themselves, where do they want to be? Where do you want to be? What kind of emunah do you want to have? Everybody has emunah. Atheists have so much emunah, so much faith in what they believe. To deny that there's anything above them, that they are God, takes a lot of faith, You know, you even meet atheists who are all into astrology, right? They love so they don't believe in Hashem. They don't believe in a God, but they do believe that there's like, you know, the stars and the constellations are in control of their lives. So they're victims still, but they want to be in control. They don't want to believe in Hashem because why? Because Hashem has accountability. And to have the highest level of emunah, which is to have belief that Hashem does everything, and yet Hashem wants my action. Hashem wants me to move forward. Why are you crying out? To me. Cry out to me, and now move forward. Go do something. As we say in recovery, change a thought, change an action. As we say in recovery, change an action, change a thought. First comes the action, which is why we put on the arm tefillin first and then the head tefillin. Because in order to change your head, you got to change your hands. You got to change your actions. We can't meditate ourselves into a new reality. We can only act ourselves into a new reality. We can only take one step at a time, and it's always going to be challenging because you don't know if it's actually moving. You look behind you and you're like, oh, wow, the sea's been splitting this whole time. But in front of you, it looks the same. It's still up to my nose. But behind you, it's completely split. So you're like, okay, I guess it's working. Let's keep going. And then you think again, oh, I'm not sure. And you look behind, oh, wow, I'm even farther. So we should be zocher to have the highest level of emunah. The highest level of emunah, that knowing that Hashem does everything, and yet Hashem needs me to do something in the world. That Hashem's doing everything. Stand beside and be silent. And at the same time, move forward. Keep doing what you got to do. Do what you got to do. But know that Hashem is doing things and moving worlds for you. And keep guarding your bris. In this way, you won't have to do as much. Things are happening much more easier. Not having to work as much. Not having to do so much to get parnasa. And we're going to see how every single person, one by one, every single Jew and every single person at large is seeing the power of guarding their bris, the power of guarding their eyes. And away from the crazy filth that so much of the world has fallen into and justifying, even in their own brains, melting. That the sages said, "Let Moshiach come and let me not see him," because they knew that we would be seeing all kinds of filth. And it says in times Moshiach, before Moshiach comes, that the people's eyes will be melting in their head, and you can see now what they mean by that. That people's eyes are melting in their head. That we need the Geulah Shalema right for the splitting of the sea, but it's going to take us to bring it about. So we should be zoicha to continue to guard our eyes, to guard our covenant, to reach higher levels of emunah, and to do that which Hashem wants us to do, not overdo it, but just the amount Hashem wants us to do on our current level of emunah, till we get to the point where mamish, the world is running away from us. That all of nature is running away from us and saying, whatever you want. Because now we've achieved the level where Hashem trusts us, that Hashem has bitachon in us. That when we wake up, we say, Rabbi Munasecha. When we say Modeani, we end with Rabbi Munasecha. Rabbi Munasecha, what do you mean? Hashem has Emunah. How does Hashem have Emunah? We talked about how is it possible that Emunah exists and there's free will. That we believe that Hashem does everything and Hashem does everything for good reason. At the same time, I have free will. How is that possible? Well, there's even a bigger question. How is it possible that Hashem, who does everything, will do everything, and knows everything, also needs to have Emunah? Doesn't he know what's going to happen? That's not Emunah. Because he still requires a lowly, amazing, beautiful person with the holy neshama inside them to go and to make the right decision right now. And he knows it's going to happen. And it will happen. He believes it's going to happen. And it is happening. So we should also have Emunah in ourselves That if a person doesn't believe in themselves, the person is caught in the lowest low things, that a person has to believe that I'm in existence, I'm a real person. Hashem loves me and he needs me. And one more action, one more mitzvah, one more positive thing, and I can tip the scales into the way of the Geulah. So be that person. L'chaim. Here, cheers to the true Geulah, the third Beis HaMikdash, because of you. L'chaim.